Welcome to everyone to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter today. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. It is promptly 2 p.m. Eastern Time here on Wednesday. We're here to talk about accounting, general report formatting. We're going to be together for about the next 20 minutes or so. If you have questions, please type those questions into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. We just simply ask that you do kind of keep your questions to the accounting reporting. Just keep in mind this is a series of events over today, tomorrow, and Friday on the accounting reports. Something that you may have a question about today may be answered by one of the other events here tomorrow or Friday. But I'll certainly be happy to do what I can to answer those questions for you. If you click the little red arrow at the top of your or sidebar of your webinar control panel there to minimize the webinar control pane, get that out of your way. Or if you've got two dual monitors, go ahead and drag that off to your second desktop. Just get that out of the way visually. Either one of those options work. The basis for today's webinar is taken from our accounting or A201 workbooks, pages 10 through 21. So if you have the webinar or the workbooks on that A201, you can go ahead and follow along with me on pages 10 to page 21 today. Today's event is, as usual, being recorded, so we will produce this video and put it out on our support center of our website at some point, sometime within the next probably 10 days or 2 weeks, if not sooner. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go into accounting. And when we open our accounting, there are two different ways you can access the accounting reports in Church Windows. So we can click on the reports here in the middle, the little icon. Let me get out my highlighter tool here. Right here, we've got our little reports printer icon right there. Or we can go up to reports and export at the very top left up here. Either way, it's just different things you can do with those reports once you've made those selections. So if we click on reports here in the middle, it opens up our multiple reports window, which basically essentially allows me to save regular report groupings and choose multiple reports simultaneously. So if I go, okay, I want to run my fund activity report and my treasurer's report, I can do that, okay? Or even more, if I want to add something like my balance sheet to that, I can go, okay, I want to print these reports, literally choose them, print them one right after the other. I can use the multiple reports to do that, okay? And again, I can create a grouping of reports that when I come in here, I can choose a saved report group, and it'll bring up those same reports in the desired order each and every time. Or if it's preferable for me to be able to run just say a single report, I can go up to my reports menu here, and then in the upper left, I've got financial, transaction, worksheets. So at the top of page 12 of our workbooks here, it talks about where reports are listed. So by clicking on financial, I can access my balance sheet, fund activity report, or treasurer's report singly. Or if I go to transaction here, I can find check register, deposit slip, general ledger, transaction journal, or my accounts receivable, invoices, or statements option. Also, I can go to worksheets, find my accounts payable, my list chart of accounts, summary of cash activity, trial balance, and accounts receivable report, which is the kind of the opposite or diametrically opposed to my accounts payable. So, when I click on accounts payable, it opens up my accounts payable report options screen with the 4 different reports. If I go to worksheets and accounts receivable, it opens up basically the same window just for accounts receivable. Okay. In addition to those menus, we've done our best to try to do away with menus on reporting in accounting if possible. So those are the menus. To the right of that, I can access our budget report, which we could also access by going up to budgets at the top and then right here choosing the one called budget report. In our design concept, printing checks is considered a report. So in addition to being able to access our print checks, our check printing screen from right here, we can go up to reports and export and go to print checks right here, and it'll basically open up the same window, to print our checks. So if I click on that and click on print checks, it opens up the same exact window if I were to go to the print checks window down at the bottom. Yep, there it is. Tax, to the right of our print checks option at the top. When we click on that, it shows, our little picture of Uncle Sam there. If we click on that, it allows us to reveals our 1099 miscellaneous and a 1096 report options. Just an FYI, if you're unaware, you do not need to own Church Windows Payroll in order to produce 1099s for your contractors that are paid through accounting. Just an FYI, if they're a vendor and I pay them, I can, in a particular accounting year, I can produce a 1099 miscellaneous for them. Okay? And then also a means of being able to export the data from the system. So if I click on that, it brings up an option to choose, exporting Church Windows or chart of accounts data, accounts payable information, or accounts receivable. Okay? So again, a couple different ways we can access and get to the reports in Church Windows Accounting. I personally am fond of going up to reports and export and choosing the report I'm wanting from one of the lists here, because generally I run reports singly. But maybe tomorrow when we talk about our getting ready for meetings committee reports, we'll probably talk more about using the multiple report options where we can create a grouping of reports that we run each and every time. Okay? All right, so on page 13 of our workbook where we're talking about report format tabs, this is, as I was kind of developing this event today, I'm thinking, okay, how do we teach reports to folks as kind of different reports include different information, okay? But that doesn't mean that we can't design, and we have designed some similarities within those reports, okay? And what I mean by that is, on our page 13 of our workbooks, it talks about options tab. Folks, virtually every report has an options tab. If I go to transactions and I go to my general ledger, I've got here, steering some focus here, a tab called options on my general ledger report, okay? If I go to balance sheet, it opens up my balance sheet options to a tab called options. If I go to treasurer's report and I open these reports, notice each one of them have a tab called options. Okay? This is important because, again, it's a convention. It's something which is common to virtually all of the reporting functions that we offer in our accounting system. Is virtually every report you go to is going to have a tab called options. Virtually every report in Church Windows Accounting is going to have a tab called columns or detail. We notice here under our balance sheet options and our treasurer's report options, we also have tabs called columns and detail. Many reports are going to have a tab called custom account groups. Okay? So, again, what's important to understand for you as a user of the software is very much you're going to find similar type controls and conventions that occur on virtually all of the accounting reports. Now, where things get to be a little bit sort of tricky for you is what is on each one of these options tab may vary based on the type of report it is. So yeah, on our options tab, we're going to have an accounting year where we can choose to run, say, our treasurer's report for any one of our previous years. Or if I go to my balance sheet, again, can run the balance sheet for any accounting year while remaining in 2018. Okay? You're going to find some similarities in these options tabs and on these screens for virtually all of these reports. But what's on these options tab is what's going to be different. And that's what you've got to get used to, is playing around and kind of exploring and experimenting with some of these options that are on some of these options tab that are unique to these specific reports. Okay. Like under my, under our general ledger options screen. So I know I've got that back here somewhere. General ledger options. I've got an option here. I've got lots of things on my general ledger. Okay. Like right here, running balances or reverse transactions. So if I click on, on the general ledger options, it's listed here. But if I go up to something else like under reports, transaction, and choose my transaction journal, I don't have running balances, but I do have an option here on the right-hand side called reverse transactions. Okay. Okay, I'm kind of being told by somebody that they're having trouble with sound. I'm not only hearing it from one particular person. I'm not getting it from everybody. So I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Learning to kind of explore and run and just kind of play around with these reports to determine, one, what you can do with them and what you can get is really vital to understanding how reporting works. Okay? Do we want to see accounts with no activity? Do we want to see reversed transactions? Again, that's a choice you make, okay? That's not something Church Windows can decide. But yes, if I choose to go, okay, I want to see my reverse transactions on my transaction journal, I would still enter my reverse, check show reversed. But what you enter here is basically what you're asking to see, for your periods for your report. Virtually all of our reports are going to have, like in this case for our transaction journal, a date occurred range. In terms of the transaction journal, that's how that appears. If I go to my general ledger, it's going to be under balances down here in the bottom left. It's going to show, balances for either for the month or for the year to date. Okay? Again, these are reporting conventions that we have in accounting that are available to you. Okay? You need to decide what it is that you want to choose on those particular, reports. Like here under my general ledger, I've got an option. I can go ahead and run a general ledger for a particular fund if I want, for a month or for a year. Okay? For the year to date or for a month. And that will bring in all of my income and my expenses as well as the fund and every single transaction that I've posted that has affected that particular fund, as opposed to maybe running it for a single account. Okay? It's really kind of hard to narrow it down in terms of reports, folks, because there's just so much options and flexibility that you can have for these reports. Each report does a different thing. Okay? So one of the things that I wanted to go back to as well on this is that I wanted to visit was, and we're going to come back to that, is, again, paying attention to these tabs is vitally important to the successful reporting and understanding of Church Windows accounting reports. Okay? Do we want to see comments on reports? So as we click on each one of these, we notice we've got a Custom Account Groups tab. Custom Account Groups on General Ledger Options. That is a reporting feature that allows us to isolate and run random reports or run reports for specific accounts or specific selections of accounts. But you virtually got custom account groups on every single report in accounting. Not all, but in many of them. Okay? It's what do you want to see on your report? Which kind of moves us over to our next one, which is kind of about our columns. Our columns tab. You've got a tab where on virtually every report you can decide what information columns you want to see on your report. Okay? We try to give you as much flexibility on those reports as we possibly can. So, you're going to see different information columns that are available to you on your treasurer's report than you're going to see on something like maybe your general ledger or your transaction journal. Okay? Different reports report on different information, but every one of those reports has a tab called columns. I go, okay, on my treasurer's report, I don't want to see my previous year. So I highlight that under my visible columns, and I double click on it, and it moves it off there back over to my available columns. But I do want to see my over under year to date. So I double click on that, and it moves it over. Okay? And then, or you can use the arrows here in the middle to move them back and forth, and you can even use the up and down arrows here on the right to be able to reorder those columns. So if I go, okay, I want to see I want my over under to be the last thing I see, so I'm going to highlight annual budget, push up my arrow there on the right, and it's now reordered those. Okay? And then when I print my report, it's going to display those columns on the report in that exact order from left to right. Okay? But every column, virtually every report has a columns tab. Okay? Getting used to working with these. A biggie on here is like comments and line item comments. Okay? Some other reports are more specific. Things like, invoices and statements for accounts receivable or deposit slip, those have basically just an options tab and a fonts. A deposit slip is a very specific report. We don't have column control on that. Okay? But on things like our balance sheet, fund activity report, and treasurer's report, every one of those reports has these columns, these tabs that I'm talking about. Columns, options, columns, detail, fonts. Yeah, notice we don't have a custom account groups tab there because, again, it's going to report strictly on our funds. Okay? Albeit we could randomly select some funds, but you can by going to your funds tab. Okay? All right, looks like we got some questions here. Are custom account groups per year groups year specific? Chris, if I'm not mistaken, that could be true in the standpoint that if I had set up my custom account group after I'd opened 2018 and went back and entered it in 17, I believe that would be true. But as soon as I set it up and I open up my new accounting year, those should be brought forward. But I do believe you're right. They are year specific. So custom account groups, folks, again, we're not going to get into detail on that, but basically if I go to my treasurer's report and I go to custom account groups, again, once I build a custom group of account groups with accounts, those groups are available on every report that I have in my reports list. The accounts that I've added to my particular group may not be. So like right here, if I choose trustees, and I go back to options and I include accounts with zero balance and I click print, it's going to bring in all of those trustees accounts because I know I've added just income and expenses for those, or expenses. Okay? But when I go to something like my balance sheet, okay, and I choose my balance sheet and I go to custom groups and I check my trustees accounts and I click print, including accounts with zero balance, I don't think I'm going to get anything because there are none of my accounts that I've added to my trustees group are balance sheet accounts. Essentially, there's no assets, no liabilities, no funds that are included as part of that trustees. It's really only effective for reports, like in this case, like my treasurer's report or budget report or list chart of accounts where those expenses can show. Okay? You can find more on setting up custom account groups on the support center of our website. And you folks, we've got lots of information about on reporting and accounting, reporting on accounts, other reports and accounting on the website out there already. Okay, but this is just basically trying to help you feel more comfortable, learning to understand. Okay, I want to go in and I want specific information. Can I get that on this particular report? Learning to work through these particular tabs across the top of each one of those reports is going to tell you whether that's capable or not. You're able to do that. If you're unsure, call us. I know what's on each one of these reports. If you tell me what you want, I can tell you what report you can find that on or not, as the case may be. Okay? All right, let's see. What other questions do we have? I chose the treasurer's report the other day and chose to remove accounts with zero balance. What I found is that it only looked at actuals, so it removed accounts. It ended up removing lines that had budget activity, which created inaccurate reporting. Does that make sense? Absolutely, Pam. yeah, the accounts, if you're wanting to include all of those accounts that are budgeted, you might have to include accounts with zero balance. But that may also bring in some other accounts that you don't want to see. That's where, again, you need to steer your focus over and begin to look at using something like your custom account groups to do that. Okay? Yeah, this is a very common support question, and that would be an effective use of setting up a custom account group called budgeted accounts, and you create the group that includes all of your budgeted accounts. You'll choose that and leave your accounts with zero balance, and all those budget accounts will still remain. Good question. Folks, you can't be afraid of kind of diving in and playing with some of this stuff. If you can break something on here, then we need to know how you broke it so we can get our developers to fix it, okay? But there is really nothing you can do to break these reporting conventions in the software. I was working with somebody yesterday on one of my support calls, and they go, well, I want the treasurer's report, but I don't want to see the detail of every account. Perfect. That's what we've got the detail tab here for. If I go, okay, I uncheck my total income and total expenses, basically all I'm asking to see on there is just the subtotals. So this would be a treasurer's report as it appears in Church Windows with no account detail but just our subtotals. All right, so where's that coming up here? It's taking a minute to bring that up. I'm not sure why that's not coming up. I can do it for another report too. Sorry, folks, I'm not sure why that's not generating here. Let's try a different report. Let's try balance sheet. And detail, again, collapse all. Let's do uncheck all. And print again. This might be an issue with this version. There it is. So an example of, here's our balance sheet where it shows no single account but only subtotals only. Some folks like this. That's why we've included this. And you can pick and choose. You know, you can go, okay, I want to see some details of some of my funds, but I don't want to necessarily see the detail of my assets or my liabilities. And that report will bring up no subtotals for assets and liabilities, but show the detail of my funds. There it is. You got lots of options and flexibility. Okay? All right. We're going to leave it at that here. We've gone a couple minutes long. I apologize for that. This, again, will be put out on our website here sometime in the next week or 10 days or so. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact support, 800-533-5227. And maybe some of you will be at our webinar events here on the accounting reporting tomorrow that will offer a little more detail in terms of some of this stuff. Okay? All right. Hope it's been helpful. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.